Welcome to the John Sporting Goods Podcast. You're going to get expert insight and tips for fishing the Puget Sound, San Juan Islands, and tributaries. I'm your host, Connor Martinis, and owner of John Sporting Goods in Everett, Washington. Welcome to the podcast, and let's get fishing. Welcome back, guys. This is Connor Martinis from John Sporting Goods in Everett, Washington. You are watching the John Sporting Goods podcast. We got a whole bunch of feedback, and a bunch of you guys wanted us to talk about some Puget Sound and straight halibut. So I brought in the best. I got John Martinis and Joey Pyburn, and we are going to give you a podcast about halibut. First things first, we always start off with the rules. Areas 5 through 10 is open 7 days a week. The opening day is April 2nd, and it goes through June 30th or until the quota is met. And you are allotted one halibut per day per angler. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You can have a possession limit of 2 days possession limit. So if you're out staying in the San Juans, you can fish for 2 days and get your halibut. You're one a day, and that's what you are allotted. Then you got to go back to where you come from. Let's get into it. Let's talk about some areas that we're gonna kind of focus on. There's a few in the Puget Sound. There's some out in the straits, and let's hear some of the areas.
Well, if stuff that's real places that are real reachable by boat out of Everett, Edmonds, and the marinas in the Central Sound is Area 6, and the easiest place to get to there is Dallas Bank. And I've caught several halibut on the very eastern edge. I would say it would be the northern eastern edge of that in about 100 feet of water, anchored. And most of the halibut you're going to catch in all the areas out in the Straits of Juan de Fuca, you're going to catch them when the tide's going out. I'm not saying that you're never going to catch them when the tide's coming in, but it's just like salmon fishing out there. When the tide's going out, that's when the very best fishing is. And the bite comes on just after the tide peaks at its fastest part of the tide, and then just start slowing down. Not at the tide change, like a lot of people talk about, but when the water just begins to slow down, those fish get on the move. And they're big fish, they have to eat a lot, so almost anything you present to them, they're gonna eat if it's in their path.
Yeah, nice. And a lot of guys talk about when we're fishing halibut and we're anchoring, are we running chum bags off our downrigger balls, or are we doing the whole gamut, or?
Yeah, chum bag, and don't put just enormous amounts of stuff in the chum bag off your downrigger, because you already have a 12 or 15 pound ball on there, and it's really tough on the downrigger if you put 10 pounds of chum in there. So I'll throw a piece of salmon in there, or some anchovies or some herring, and put a little bit of herring oil on there, or shrimp oil, something that kind of bleeds out into the current, because they're going to be coming to your scent bag from a long ways away.
Yeah, and the theory with that is we're trying to anchor kind of on the edge of a bank, so our scent is traveling downhill. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, you're going to be up on that edge where it's coming out of real deep water, and that edge comes up to 100 feet and kind of plateaus out a little bit. Those are the areas where there's a lot of herring and an enormous amount of candlefish, and that's what they're feeding on there. I mean, I've caught them with 5-inch Dungeness crab in them out there, and so they feed on a little bit of everything, but mainly they have a diet of fish out there, because that's what's available, especially being they're not necessarily a bottom feeder, but that's where the bait is out there.
Yeah, and I brought this bait bag in, and it looks really big, but a lot of the times what I do is I fill this about halfway up, and then I double it over. So when I'm zip tying this to my downrigger ball or my snubber or something, I'm kind of going through almost 4 layers of chum bag, and it seems to hold a lot better like that. I'm using those heavy duty zip ties, and I'll bring like 4 or 6 of these. So, we'll get done, say we soaked it for an hour, we'll pull it up, we'll switch it out for a new one, and then we can go back and kind of fill that thing back up.
So if you have some crab bait in the refrigerator, salmon parts and stuff that you've been saving, put it in your chum bag, because that's what works real good.
Yeah,
and I think one of the keys to being successful out there in the Straits is creating that good chum slick, get that scent trail going, and freshen that thing up throughout the day. Don't just, it's no different with your baits. Make sure you're bringing them up, freshen them up, whether you're completely swapping out and putting a new piece of herring or squid or whatever you like to run, octopus, doesn't mean you have to ditch that bait, but throw it in a little Tupperware, rescent it, but have another one ready right away to run back down there. So you're cycling your baits and keeping that fresh scent going. Yeah. Same with your chum. Make sure you're freshening that thing up, and don't be afraid to, put some time in. Like, this isn't one of those fisheries where we set up and when you don't get one in an hour, you leave. You pretty much are going to sit in that spot throughout the tide. Yeah. And eventually you got to remember, when that tide's ripping, those halibut don't want to be fighting that current. So like John mentioned, as that tide just starts to slow, that's when they feel that and they go, okay, this is when those sand lance are going to start to come out of the gravel, right? As that current slows, now it's time to get on the move and feed. And it's all about just hunkering down, being patient, and letting the bait and the chum do the work.
Yeah.
And Joey had a really good point about not moving around because you're not getting a bite. Remember, you have your chum bag out there, and let's say it's been out there for a couple hours. You've developed a scent line, and when you pull the anchor and go someplace else, just because somebody caught one fish a mile away from you, you're making a horrible mistake because you've already developed that chum line, and so you want to stay there.
You're invested.
And the bite comes on just like salmon fishing. You could be there for 2 or 3 hours and not get a sniff, and all of a sudden you have a couple fish in the boat.
Yeah. And it can happen really fast.
Real fast.
That's exactly right. I've been out there before with my Uncle Ray, spent a lot of time out there on all of the banks. And, Ray's deal is we're going to stay here until we get our fish.
Yep.
It doesn't always mean you're going to get your fish, but the last thing you want to do is go reset because you're completely starting over. And you may have pulled out of there and left right as those fish were starting to move your way.
Definitely. Yep. I was thinking the same thing. Absolutely. You stick to your spot until the tide's done, and you see success. Like they're saying, you can have one fish, 2 fish right back to back, and then it goes back to nothing. So you got to stick to your guns. If you anchor, you've established scent, stay there.
Now, the one thing we didn't mention is how far to put your squid rig. You just got a rig like this. You put a release 5 feet up from the downrigger ball, and let it out about 25 feet, even longer if you want to, because these are pretty light. They're going to have a piece of bait on them, a piece of salmon or a piece of herring, and it's just waving around back there behind the downrigger. Yeah. And so you let your downrigger out till it hits the bottom, and then bring it up about a foot, and then just leave it out there waving around back there.
Yeah. So you're basically you're anchored, you're fishing off your downrigger, you're using your salmon release clip. The offshore red ones work really good for this because they're a really heavy tension. And like John says, you're putting this thing 5 feet above your downrigger ball. Your chum bag's typically on your downrigger ball. You're letting 20 to 30 feet of line out, and then your bait's just sitting behind that chum. So your chum line's going right through your herring or right through your hoochie with your piece of salmon on it. And these halibut will come up and nibble on it, and it's like an explosion when they rip this off your downrigger clip. It's probably one of the coolest things to ever see.
It is. It definitely is. When that pops off they're on, and typically once that happens, they suck that bait in, they feel those hooks, they turn and they want to get away, and it's go time.
Game on.
One thing, again, going back to cycling baits, I think, which is the most important part of this whole deal, right? You got to keep fresh bait down there. Yeah. On the radio show on Saturday, I had a gentleman on the text line go, "Oh, so last week it's Bill Monroe Jr. changes his herring every drag on the Columbia, and now, Joey, you're saying you got to swap your bait out every 20 minutes for halibut." He goes, "I see I see what you're doing here, trying to sell bait, but it's less about swapping that bait out to a completely new bait every time. It's about bringing that bait up that's been down there for 20 minutes, throw it in. I throw it in my little chum bucket with a bunch of scent. Any bait that is chewed on that I'm not going to use anymore, I chop it up. Those herring, get the guts in them, and I just put them in there with that squid and another herring on it, so it's ready to go.
Yeah.
And then on the this is what you're going to have, one of these corkscrew swivels on the end of your line, how you attach your leader. So when you pull this thing up, all you got to do is
you're feeding it on and off quick.
Pop that off real quick, grab the fresh one, put it on, and you're back in the water quickly, and then you're going to freshen up that bait that's been down for a bit.
I do it just a little bit differently. You got a double hook, and they're both good ways. There's all kinds of good ways to catch fish. For sure. You got these are a couple 10-aught Gamakatsu hooks here. And what I do is, I take like a belly strip of herring, and I put it on this hook, and then I take this magic thread, which is all it is elastic thread, and I tie it on there. Sure. And the same if I put on a 7 or 8 inch herring, I just kind of thread him on there, and then I tie him on there real good. Because when those fish come along, I don't want him to get a free meal.
Totally.
And so here's a tip when they bite. Your rod's going to start bouncing like it does, just like any other fish bite. Don't go grab your rod and start jerking it around, because it'll alert the fish that you're on the other end. Just leave it alone until the fish takes the bait and everything off the downrigger release. Because if you start playing around with your rod, you're going to scare the fish and he's going to go away. That's kind of the same way as lingcod fishing or a lot of bottom fishing type fishing is. You just let them take it. Because one thing about a halibut, once he finds your bait, he wants it. And he's going to be really excited because he's getting a free meal, and he's going to consume that. He's going to take that in all the way to his throat, and he's going to close his mouth, and like Joey said, and then he's going to turn away. And that's when he takes it off the downrigger release. So you don't want to pull it away from him. You want him, he'll stay with you. You don't have to worry about halibut like some other fish. When they take a bait, they're in it for the long run. I'll tell you what, I can't even remember when I've been fishing halibut where they grabbed the bait and then they dropped it. It just doesn't happen.
For sure.
So don't be your own worst enemy on catching these things.
Yeah, wait till those fish are on. It's another one of those fisheries similar to you're running cut plugs. When you see that first whack, don't go grab the rod. Wait till that fish sucks that herring in and turns. And this is kind of the same thing. And if it, obviously all the viewers out there, you guys, there's a ton of stuff on YouTube. You're watching, everything Connor brings to you sometimes weekly. Go watch some underwater video of halibut taking the bait, and you'll see what happens is they come up to it, and when they open that mouth, they suck that bait in. They don't always get it. Sometimes it pops out of there, and that's when you see that bite. Leave it alone, because they're going to come up again, and eventually they're going to open that mouth. That bait's going down into their throat. They think they got a meal. Then they feel something's a little weird. They turn and they want to get away, and they're on at that point.
They get hooked up.
Yeah,
that's the other benefit to fishing off a downrigger is you just leave it there, and he's going to do all the work for you. And the time you pick up your rod is when he pulls it off the clip and your rod buckles over. Then it's game time. The other one I wanted to mention is we're talking a lot about hoochies. One of my favorite rigs for halibut is running a double hook setup, 2 10-aught hooks, and then I use Joey's Black Label herring, and I'm just running a herring dead nuts by itself. A lot of
trolling.
No, same thing. I'm running it off the downrigger.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you hook this right, it'll sit there and spin behind your chum bag too. But a lot of the times I fished with guys in the past where they're running these hoochies upside down. They have spinning glows. They have all this funky stuff on there, and I'm on the other side with a straight herring, and I don't want to say every time, but a lot of the times they're just hitting just a straight.
Well, they're
bait.
used to eating herring.
They're used to
right?
Yeah,
and
totally.
So I also will run a similar setup to that.
Yeah.
I think the big herring are they work really well here in Puget Sound. I will thread this hook through the fish's mouth, pull it all the way through.
Yeah.
Then I'll sink this one kind of in this, just coming out below the gill. And I will put a bend in that fish with my hand, and then I'll put a skewer in it, and I'll put a nice bend in them, and you'll get a nice little roll, slow roll out of that fish. And a lot of times that's the rig that gets most of the fish.
Yeah, totally.
Let's identify some of the squids we have on the table here.
This is probably one of the most notorious ones in all of John's literature.
We talk about tied up.
Yep, it's the P-line 002 white squid. It's a 7.5-inch squid. Super good. And this is kind of contrary to what a lot of people say fishing that deep. This is a UV squid. So kind of unique. You know, we always talk about glow for halibut and fishing that deep, but this is a UV one, and this one has caught a lot of halibut in the Strait and in the Puget Sound.
And Joey has a B2 squid.
Yeah, the B2s. That's the UV B2 squid. It's the white UV. Kind of a funky looking thing, but really, really great for halibut fishing. I mean, we use them at the ocean all the time, but they work out in the Strait really well too.
Well, and they look so similar to the squid that we have in Puget Sound. And if you think about what halibut are doing, they're sitting down there on the bottom waiting for some unsuspecting bait fish or squid or octopus, and they see these things all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of octopus, a lot of guys will use tentacles to the octopus and they'll put them underneath these hoochies. That's a really good option too. One thing, they last forever. It's so durable. You could put one on and it'll last you quite a bit of time. So
When you clean halibut, you find octopus in them all the time.
Yep.
Or when you pull them on board, they puke one up.
Yeah,
Sometimes they puke up a really fresh one and then don't hesitate to run that thing back down there.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a really good tip when you're fishing off your downrigger. So you're fishing along in the tides, and you're catching halibut or not catching halibut, and pretty soon the tide starts slowing down. You have to, when it really slows down and your boat starts wavering back and forth, you have to quit fishing on your downrigger for about an hour, and that's where the spreader bar with a squid attached to this end right here. You put that on there with
your lead,
a 2 or 3 pound lead, and you want it. You have enough lead to where it goes straight down, and so you fish with your spreader bar for about an hour, hour and a half. Because if you just leave your rig on your downrigger while your boat starts to go back and forth with the current, you're going to be all tangled up, just the worst horrible tangle up in the world. And pretty soon as the tide turns, your boat's going to be facing the opposite direction. So you can see everything has to go around that corner when the boat swaps direction on the tide change.
Now, you brought up a good point. So say we're fishing a ledge on a certain tide, the tide flips over, now the stern of the boat's facing the other way. Are we picking up and moving, or are you trying to position yourself where on either tide it's going to fish where your scent's going downhill?
Well, normally the tide, depending, you don't have much choice some days. But let's say we're out there at the optimal tide when the tide's going out. So when the tide turns and the tide starts coming in, you're pretty much wasting your time.
It's time to go in.
It's time to go in, because especially the first half of the incoming tide, you're never going to catch a fish. I don't want to say never, 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 but
close to
you're going to spend a lot of time at it to get a bite. Why it's that way out there, I can't tell you. It's exactly, like I said earlier, the same for salmon.
Almost everything in Puget Sound, right, John? I mean, everything tends to fish better on that outgoing tide.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you notice, Joey, you and I have been fishing in Canada here the last couple months, and it's the same thing on the banks there. When the tide's going out, especially on the last part of the tide, you start seeing big plumes of bait showing up, huge plumes, and you see the candlefish, that's kind of a mottled look on your fish finder. But when the tide turns to come in, boy, I tell you what, the screen gets pretty blank.
It does.
Interesting.
Wherever that bait goes, who knows where it goes? I think it just goes real deep, because they can't stay there forever, because, everything in the ocean eats them. And so everything goes for cover, and wherever they go, the salmon go there too.
Well, one thing I've done out in the Straits especially is, say there's 4 people on the boat and you can only have 2 rods down off your downrigger, but you got a couple other guys with licenses on the boat. You got good flow. You got a scent trail going back there. Take a big Fisherman's Gold eel. Put a chunk of bait on it. Drop that thing straight down behind the boat, and you can just you can back bounce, like back bouncing eggs, and you can drop that thing back. And sometimes those fish, especially when the tide is pushing pretty hard, they may have moved up a ways, but they're not ready to commit until that tide slows a little. And you will pick up some extra fish by walking one of those, swim baits or, those eels, walk them back. And you can walk them way back behind the boat. And it just, you got extra guys on the boat, you might as well have some more gear in the water. And sometimes you'll pick one off that's just sitting back there on the in your scent line.
How much lead would you use for that? 10 or 12 ounces or even more?
Totally depends on how much that current's.
Yeah.
Whatever, 8 ounces up to the big,
32s.
the big boys. Whatever you can, because I want that thing I want to be able to pop it up off, let it fall back down, and as it falls back down, it's dropping back another 3 or 4 feet. Pop it up, let it work its way down, and just kind of work that thing back. And it gives folks something to do and just to keep busy, but you will pick up some extra fish doing that.
Yeah, totally. Next thing I want to talk about, what size hooks are we using? I like to use 10-aught hooks.
10-aughts.
These are just your regular J hooks. There's a huge thing, guys like using circle hooks. Personally, I like using regular J hooks or the hooks you have, which is a 10-aught big river hook. Those are great hooks for halibut. If a guy was using a circle hook, I feel like you got to let him eat longer. You could possibly miss fish with them. What do you think?
Yeah, it's just, I don't use circle hooks in Puget Sound. And really, like when we are using circle hooks, that's typically an Alaska thing. We're up in Sitka. We're anchored up in 400 to 600 feet of water. There's J hooks all the way around the boat with basically these same setups. We'll have one guy who we know is going to be very patient, and he's willing to put in the time with a whole salmon head with the guts attached on a circle hook, and he's going to sit on that rod, and he knows the program. When it starts to eat, you don't touch it, you let him eat. And what that does too is you have this whole salmon head. I take them apart with the guts attached, and you have all this guts down there and the stomach contents, and little fish will come up and start picking. It creates more of a scent trail down there. But those circles, you're shopping for something in that 60, 70, 80, 100-pound range, big fish.
Yeah.
And really here in Puget Sound, I think you're going to be better off. You're going to catch more fish. I don't necessarily care how big they are in Puget Sound. 10, 12, 25-pound halibut are amazing. And I'll take those all day.
Yeah, it's a victory to get one of those.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we brushed over it, but I wanted to talk about a couple of the spots that are on the inside of the Puget Sound, that guys with smaller boats can get to. There's 2 in particular that I'm thinking about. Mutiny Bay is one of them, and Admiralty Bay is another one. Now, your fishing there is really tough. I'll just say that. I bet you there's probably 20 halibut caught out of there a year, and I'm not exaggerating that by any means. But it is a local spot. It is a place that guys do catch halibut. So if you can't get around the corner and get out into the strait, that is another option for you. You could stop there and fish Mutiny Bay. And then Admiralty Bay is just across from Mid-Channel Bank. It's up by Fort Casey.
And then on the north end, Burroughs Bay can be really good too. And sometimes it can be really good in there. I mean, I've had years where my uncle and some of my friends go in there and they're getting their halibut or 2 halibut every day, every time they fish.
Especially earlier in the year like it is now. I think they definitely long line that. So I don't know what time of year, but I think it's in May. So that early April opener, you have a pretty good chance in there too, for sure.
And then you have the other spots in Area 7. You have Partridge Bank, Eastern Bank, Hind Bank, and Middle Bank. I've caught the biggest halibut I've caught out in the Straits of Juan Fuca, which was just a little shade over 50, was in 60 feet of water right on top of Partridge Bank. Caught a couple up there. So, sometimes, on some of these banks, it pays to fish shallow because nobody's up there. And that, there's a lot of people out fishing, more so when it first opens. But if there's a lot of people out fishing, go someplace where there's not people. These fish are roaming around. So you don't have to just find a place that's 100 feet of water. They're roaming around looking. They're a big animal. They have to keep. They're just like any other big animal. They're on the search for food all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, all those years, John, when we had kind of wide open winter Chinook fishing out in the Straits, how many times would we be out there and we would be trolling partridge in 40 feet of water?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we'd start encountering a lot of halibut, in that February, March time frame.
Yes.
And they're right up there. Don't think they're not up shallow, because they are. And if you can separate yourself from the pack and find those spots, you can be really successful. Another spot that's out there that's, if you look at Partridge Bank and you follow it north, you're going to see that underwater, that thing attaches to Smith Island. And Smith Island can be a really good spot to fish too.
Yeah.
There's a couple
they
spots.
really do good on Smith Island, where that bank goes way to the west, out on that tip out there.
Yeah.
On both sides of that. That can be a really good spot.
Yeah, I fished that for blackmouth a while ago, or years ago now at this
Yeah.
point. But
So there's a bunch of spots, that you can go out there, and these banks are huge. I mean, gosh, they're just, you'll see the boats all huddled up in one area. Remember, that's a lot of scent bags in a small area. So, you might, what I like to do is I either get down below them or I move to the sides a little bit. I don't, just because there's a lot of boats in one place doesn't mean that's where the fish are. That, boats attract boats. And these fish are moving around. If you have good scent, the fish are going to find you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we've been talking a lot about herring. What size herring are we using? We're using the big black label. The purple label is kind of the one that I like to stick to, but those are the two sizes. We're not using anything different.
I mean, blues also. You got to kind of
purple.
figure out, think about what's out there
Yeah.
in the straits when it comes to herring.
Okay.
Most of the time, what we have out there are reds, greens, blues, some purples. The big black label ones do really well. I mean, we sell probably more of those than anything, but don't think, have one big black label down there and have maybe a blue label, something with a little bit smaller profile. John's already caught some halibut out there fishing on the Canadian side. Obviously, it's not open this year or right now to harvest. That opens up April 1st. But you're catching them on spoons, John, and
Catch them
small
on coho killers.
Right. So don't think, they're only going to eat a big bait.
Right.
These things are used to eating a lot of sand lance, and those sand lance vary. They can be a couple inches long, the little tiny ones just coming out of the gravel, all the way up to 6 inches long and nice and fat. So they're eating a wide variety of baits out there and a bunch of different sizes. So I always say, hey, I don't like having two of the same thing down there.
Right.
I want to have something a little bit different size, maybe dyed blue. You can easily dye some of this herring blue. The blue color seems to be really effective. So mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to anchor, just troll for these things. I fished Canada. Well, I've fished Canada the last 3 months, and I've caught several halibut, and all on spoons, and so. Get some salmon tackle, a flasher, and a spoon. There's nothing that says you can't fish with salmon tackle. There's no rules against that. I would troll a 7-inch herring and a flasher to attract them. And you got it thumping around down there, and then you have just a naked herring on the other side, and you can just troll up and down that bank. I'm telling you what, it is just absolutely an incredible way to catch them. So if you think about it, the theory's a little bit different. When you're anchored, you're waiting for the halibut to come to you. It's kind of like being in a duck blind, and you're waiting for the ducks to come to you, and they get next to you, and you get them. Halibut are the same way. You're anchored there, and they have to come to you. Trolling. Now, if let's say you're going to troll down Hind Bank or you're going to troll down Middle Bank, those are the two longest banks out there. You can troll for up to 2 or 3 miles, and you're covering a lot of territory, and you're covering territory where nobody's fishing at all. If you're fishing Middle Bank, just troll right down the U.S.-Canada line, just right down the bank. It's going to start up in about 90 feet of water on the north end, and it's going to gradually get deeper as you go to the south. So don't discount just trolling like you do for salmon, because real honestly, it's equally as fishing with halibut gear. There's absolutely one's not better than the other.
Yeah, and just I talk about trolling when I do my halibut seminar, and if you're not the kind of guy who can sit on anchor, you're not a plunker, you don't have that kind of patience, it's really, really effective. And then you're trolling, you're covering ground, you're actually searching for those halibut, and do the same thing. If you're gonna go to partridge, look for that edge, and where that scent is going to be going over, that's what they're going to be sitting on. Get on that edge and troll down that edge. Slow it down a little bit. I love the 7-inch herring behind a flasher. Get that thing right down close to the bottom. Work that downrigger. Keep it in the zone. Slow it down. and you're going to catch halibut.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite tactics to fish halibut on the banks is to fish middle bank, anchored just right on the U.S. side, so nobody can fish on the other side of you. Now, I mean, unless they have a Canadian license, and the likelihood of that is pretty slim. And so all the area to the west, you got all to yourself. Just make sure you don't drift over the line. Either that, or you can buy a Canadian license for $6.
Yeah.
You know, you can fish either side.
Yep.
Just make sure that your boat's not anchored and you're in Canada, because that's not legal.
Yeah. Then the other way to do it is to drift with your spreader bar. That would be the other option. So you got trolling, you got anchoring, and then you're drifting with your spreader bar. So you're setting up your boat to where you're going to drift, like Joey was saying. You kind of want to be on the leeward side of the current, so it's pushing all your scent downhill, and you're going to use the current, and you're going to basically drift. You might have to use your kicker or your main motor to slow yourself down, to slow your drift down a little bit, and then you're just constantly tapping the bottom and you're drifting along these banks. It's another really good way to do it too.
And if you're using a spreader bar, I'll tell you a really good tip. When this goes to, you have to have enough lead on this. When you're fishing, the line has to be straight up and down, because when the line gets at an angle, you're not going to catch anything.
Absolutely.
I mean, you might, but it's going to be a rare occurrence. It's really better. It's, you know, if you think about it, it's kind of like downrigger fishing, only you're drifting, where the line goes straight down and the bait's just straight behind this, and then you don't have to have as much line out. So, you know, so you might have to put on, when the tide's running, you know, there's some big minus tides coming up here, and so you might have to have a lot of lead on this. So don't be afraid to put a lot of lead on this and a rod that can handle a couple pounds of lead.
Sure.
Yeah, and then let's cover that a little bit. The rod, the reel, the line you're going to use. Gear up. I mean, I remember when I first started doing it, I didn't have all the fancy gear. I didn't have the money. I kind of used what I had. But, you know, what was it, 3-4 years ago, a gentleman landed a halibut that was over 300 pounds on Alden Bank up north. They're out there. There's big halibut out there. And the last thing you want is to go through all this work and not be geared up with a rod that can handle it, a reel that can handle it, and the proper line.
Yeah. Yeah, usually, as far as line goes, the most typical that I put on, guys, is 65-pound or 80-pound braid. 80-pound gets really hard to break, so that's kind of what discourages me from it. Plus, it's smaller in diameter, so it's not going to drag quite as much. But 65-pound braid, we're generally using a larger reel, and the reason we're doing that is because the gears are bigger. You need a little larger gear, especially, you know, you're putting 2 pounds, even up to 4 pounds sometimes to get yourself when the current's moving. So your reel needs larger gears, and then you won't strip those gears. But the most popular is the Dakota 800. We sell a lot of the Penn Squall 30s, and then the cold water, they make a size 30, which those are the most common ones I sell. And then rod-wise, what I like, this is an example. This is a Daiwa Harrier, and it looks really small and like it can't handle a bunch of weight, but this rod is extremely, extremely durable. You can hang 4 pounds from this, no problem. This is a 5'8", extra heavy. It's a 65 to 120 pound line rating, so super durable. And this would be kind of doubled as both. It's going to be nice if you put it in the downrigger because it's nice and lightweight, short. It's going to sit in the rod holder. And then if we are going to drift with their spreader bar, you can put 4 pounds on it. So
Sure.
Everybody kind of has their own flavor, though.
I'll tell you some really good tips on getting these fish in once you get them on. You know, your first reaction is to start pumping that rod and bringing him up. Now, if you start doing that, you know, and you lower your rod, his head can dip down and he can go back down to the bottom. What I've found when you get them on, you're better off just really laying into them and letting them come to the surface.
Yeah.
Your chances of capturing the fish and getting them in the boat is better if you just let them come up to the surface. Once they get up to the surface and they get on an angle away from you, you just reel them over to the boat. They come in. You can't believe how easy it is to get them in. I caught and released one about 40 pounds 2 weeks ago while I was fishing salmon in Canada. And while we were drifting, you know, the rods you're using are a lot lighter than halibut gear. And I instruct the guys with me. I said, just thumb it down a little bit, they don't take, when you do that, they don't take out any line at all. They're just happy as heck just to come to the surface, and then you just reel them over to the boat, and you either net them or you can gaff them and bring them in the boat.
I call it flying them like a kite.
Doesn't that work good?
You get their head up. Well, even if they kick their tail, as long as you keep that head up and you keep cranking on them, they can kick their tail. The only direction they're going to go is up.
Yeah.
As soon as you let them get their head down, they're gonna go back down to the bottom.
Yeah.
So years of catching halibut on salmon gear, whether it was here or on the west side of Vancouver Island, we used to go out of Tassus, my uncle Ron and I, and we'd fish the bottom, trolling for early springs, halibut, all the rockfish, and we'd go out and then we'd just slow walk around that bank. But you're catching these things on salmon gear because you'd run into the occasional early spring in May, and sometimes you'd get a 80, 90 pound halibut on, and sometimes what we would do is we would just speed the boat up and just hold on to that thing, and you just kind of fly them up off the bottom. And like you said, John, once you get them to the surface, just keep them coming to the boat.
Yeah.
What's amazing, as they're coming off the bottom while you're hanging on to them, they don't even wiggle.
No.
They just stay there. They're not like a salmon that wants to fight and really get away. They just float on up.
Yeah.
You fly them like a kite.
And you almost always get them when you do that. It's rare that you lose them, because if you think about it, the fish is behind the boat, you're pulling the hooks towards you, which is pulling the hooks into the fish, rather than having the hooks pointed straight up as you're pumping them up.
Yeah.
There's a good chance that if he's not hooked real good, you pull the hooks out. But if they're away from you, the hooks just dig in deeper and you get them.
Yeah.
So there's some real technique to this.
What's your just safety things? Halibut, bringing a large halibut on the boat, it can be dangerous. What do you like to do? Are you a harpoon guy, a gaff guy? What do you do? Say you get a big halibut, you get a 100-pound halibut on. What are you going to do to that thing when it comes up to the side of the boat?
That's my next question.
Well, if they're just around 25 pounds, I just net them with a salmon net. After 25 pounds, I've had them go right through the net because they really thrash around.
Go ahead and net the big ones if you'd like. Connor has lots of nets down there because you'll go through nets.
Yeah.
So if they're over 25 to 50, you gaff them. And you don't swing the gaff at them, because all you do is hit them in the head and they go back to the bottom. And every time they go to the bottom, your chances of losing them, your chances increases of not getting them. Right. Put the gaff underneath them and come straight up underneath them, just right in the gill plate. And what you do is, once you gaff them, you don't sit and look at your fish and amaze yourself at such a good catch. You bring them over to the side of the boat, all in one motion.
Use that momentum.
And when they hit the bottom of the boat, they absolutely go berserk. They levitate 1.5 feet off the bottom of the boat. So, it's kind of a one-man show. One guy, either slicing his gill plates or, putting them out of their misery with a fish club.
Yeah.
So, and they're hard to subdue. Even the 25-pounders, they get pretty crazy in the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and a 50-pounder, they're powerful.
They're very powerful. Here's the thing. Remember, these hooks are flopping around
with lead.
Snagging everything. Yep.
And when you bring that fish on board, I've had it, where the fish flops like crazy and it comes towards me and you're trying to club that thing, and I've had those hooks grab my bibs and just rip my pant leg open, and you end up with these hooks in you and the halibut bouncing around in your boat, and it's going to be a trip to the emergency room.
Yeah. Not that fun. Luckily they are barbless.
So once they get above 50,
then you have to have a harpoon.
And that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Because it's safe.
Now, I know guys who gaff. So there's some guides that are really, really good at gaffing them, any size. Yeah. But once they get above 50, you can harpoon them. And once you harpoon them, he's yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a little harpoon trick. And obviously, I learned this from Nellie fishing up in Alaska. The first time I'd never harpooned a halibut down here. Ray and I have caught some big halibut. We just, it was a goat roping session, and we got him in the boat. But Nellie's done so much of it up in Sitka. the first one, I said, man, this is like hunting. I want to harpoon this thing. And the first one, it's 50, 60 pound halibut, and I completely throw the harpoon and everything in the water. Just totally missed the whole thing. But we recovered it, and Nellie said, punch it right through its guts. It's the softest part. If you think you want to maybe go through the gills, problem is if your aim's not perfect, and that's hard, you could just make them mad, and they're going to go back down. Mm-hmm. Get a good clean shot, punch it right through their guts, and whatever that does, it kind of basically shuts their nervous system down, and they will get very quiet very quick, and then you're able to get a gaff in them and get them on board.
Nice.
And people say that when you harpoon them, let's say you just harpoon them in the middle of the fish, it doesn't wreck the meat at all.
No.
All it is a hole through the fish.
Yep.
Yeah.
It ruins nothing.
Yeah.
You don't lose any meat at all by doing that.
No.
So you can there's good places to harpoon them.
Yeah.
And then there's just whatever's available.
Sure. I just try. I
There's
like
a lot
that.
of excitement at that point.
Oh, for sure.
As like a archery hunter, I like having
Target.
I want to stick it right through their guts, and I just find that really slows them down. If you hit them, you can hit them in other places and they'll still thrash around and fight, but that tends to, and it's, you think about that gut pouch, sometimes is that big, on a small fish, it's that big. You got a pretty good zone there. You punch it through there. It's like going through butter. There's just nothing there to stop it. Sure. So it's an easy place to punch it through.
Then you just bring him over to the boat, gaff him, and bring him in.
Bring them right in.
He's still going to be wiggling when you get him in the boat.
Yep. And bleed them, cut the gills. The other thing you do, which I've done a lot with halibut, is you go to the base of their tail and you cut down to their spine, and you crack their spine open, and the blood flows out of there like a faucet. I mean, it takes every ounce of blood out of them, so that works really well too. I had two other things I wanted to mention. I forgot to mention a descender. You have to have a descender on board, ready to go, ready to drop a rockfish down if you so happen to catch one. And also, we are fishing with barbless hooks, so you have to pinch all your barbs to be legal. But any thoughts at the end? I think we covered about as much as we could for these guys.
No, we mentioned 3 good ways to catch these fish.
Yep.
They're all good ways. One way's not any better than the other. Mm-hmm. So whatever your comfort zone is the way you're going to fish while you're out there.
Absolutely.
I say it about all the fishing that I do, but when you do encounter a halibut, you catch one, and you have a lot of information there that you need to remember. Mm-hmm. So whether you're anchored or drifting or trolling, as soon as you get one on, if you have a partner on the boat, drop a waypoint.
Yep.
Because you will catch halibut in the same spots over and over and over
Isn't
again.
that the truth?
Yeah.
Boy, I tell you what, you can go to that spot time after time after time. Mm-hmm. Where we're catching those halibut up in Canada in the last couple of months. Gosh, you're within, maybe a couple hundred yards of where you got the last one.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. I forgot to mention one thing about assembling these squid. This squid here is turned inside out just to have a little different profile. But on the inside of the squid, I have some yarn. This is white yarn. I suppose it doesn't really matter what color it is. And this is for putting scent on here. Oh. And I usually just use herring scent. Nice. Now, you notice on here, I have a piece of rubber tubing here.
Really good idea.
When you're fishing halibut out in the Straits of Juan de Fuca, there's dogfish out there.
Yep.
And if you don't want to be changing this leader all the time, put a little piece of tubing on there, and that really saves your leader because you're going to catch them. And you said your uncle's been catching a few dogfish with anchovies here in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So they're out there right now. Sure. And they can really be a nuisance.
They can run through a bunch of your gear, even that, you're running whatever you like to run, 60 to 80 pound test mono. Mm-hmm. They'll just chew it up. Let me ask you a question real quick, John. So once the dogfish are out there and you're catching them constantly, sometimes it's one after the other, and you're running through tons of bait. Will you ever go to no bait, just some scent on that squid to try to slow that down?
I haven't tried that, but once you get into May, you've got dogfish.
You're gonna be
Well, I
catching-
asked.
And it's something that you just have to deal with.
Yep.
Yeah.
You have to bring lots of bait, because the days they're a nuisance, it's horrible. Mm-hmm. And
No,
so,
it's.
but
well,
you're
they
using.
sell me a lot of bait. The
Yeah,
dogfish do.
You could even go to a 100-pound test leader. This is a 60-pound test leader. I don't think it really matters what size it is, because the guides use really, really big leader when they tie them up. A lot of the guides use 100, 130-pound test
I run
leader.
100 all the time.
Yeah. So, and that fends the dogfish off a little bit more. It's just something you have to deal with. It's like fishing possession bar in August for salmon. There's no way you can avoid them. It doesn't matter if you've got an anchovy on or you got a coho killer on.
You're gonna catch 'em.
You're going to catch lots of them,
Yeah.
especially if you're using herring oil. They're really attracted to herring oil. But you have to use this stuff because everything bites on herring and herring oil.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Ray has he has a formula in his brain. It's like, I have to catch 37 dogfish and then I'll get my halibut.
The hell of it, yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't really matter what depth you go to. Boy, I tell you what, they migrate, and they start showing up this time of year. I don't know where they are before they get here, but when they show up, you've got your hands full. So you tend your gear. If you're fishing on your downrigger, out in the Straits of Juan de Fuca, the dogfish aren't big like they are in Puget Sound. And so a lot of times you don't even know you have one on your hook. So bring your gear up. You bring one piece of gear up. Never bring both up at the same time, because you want to bait down there just in case there's a halibut around. So bring one up. I would check your gear, every 20 minutes, no longer than 30 minutes, because there's other critters down there. And once you... a lot of times on some of these banks, there's a lot of what I call sand fleas, those little white things that are about a quarter of an inch long. And, in a half hour, they eat the bait right off your hook.
Mow it down, yeah.
And so you want to bring your gear up and put a new bait on.
Yeah.
And then just leader length, from your spreader bar. You don't need a really long leader. So, whatever 2 feet,
Yep.
I'll do sometimes. I'll run them pretty short, 2 to 2.5 feet, something like that.
Yeah. Now, you said you do a halibut seminar. Do you have one coming up, or you guys not quite know yet?
I did all those at the boat show.
Boat show?
I think
Okay.
I have a lingcod seminar at the North Sound Marine Expo this Saturday.
Oh, cool. Well, us three will be down at Bayside Marine on Friday at 6 p.m. We're going to be giving you guys an Area 10 blackmouth seminar. I think we covered about everything we could, so thank you guys for coming and spilling your knowledge to all these guys. And we appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time. For more hot tips, live and on-the-water videos, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And don't forget to stop by the shop on Broadway in Everett to get all your local fishing gear.